Hey guys, this is Pineapple, and today we're going to be talking all about Deku and Black Whip. In this video, I'll actually be unveiling my first shirt design, but if you want to see it without being spoiled by the video, which I don't know how that would really be possible, but if you want to try, you can follow me on Twitter at VocalPineapple. If you want to see me streaming stuff like Kingdom Hearts, Jump Force, Tales, then you can also follow me on Twitch. The link to both of those is in the description. Anyway, Black Whip is really cool, and it's about time that we started to talk about it on this channel, so let's do that after this intro. Hit it! Okay, so in My Hero Academia's manga, we've been getting some weird stuff happening for the last few chapters. During the last match of the joint training arc, Deku's quirk goes berserk and a bunch of dark energy was released from his arm. This energy sort of attacked Monoma and Shinso, and it flung Deku across the battlefield as his friends and enemies dodged it. Deku was really hurt, thinking that One for All was out of control, which would lead to him being a burden or people getting hurt, but eventually Ochako and Shinso take charge of the situation and they send Deku to his inner dream world using Shinso's quirk. Shinso fights with Deku's empty shell, and Deku talks to a previous user of One for All who explains what's going on inside of One for All and why quirks are starting to spill out of it. The user tells Deku that he's going to be getting more quirks from the previous users, so he needs to train and be ready, and then he puts his own quirk, Black Whip, into Deku's body, seemingly giving him control over it. In the most recent chapter at the time of recording, 214, Deku uses Black Whip on purpose to protect himself from falling debris that Shinso tries to drop on him in their match. Deku makes Black Whip come out of the space between his hands and his gauntlets pretty much, and the whips wrap around the falling pipes, and it seems like Deku has pretty good control this time, thanks to the help of the previous user. So we've seen Black Whip in action a few times, but what is it and what does it do? Well, Black Whip is a quirk that seems to come out of the body of the user. It looks like some kind of material or energy that comes out of the arms, and it isn't clear if it can come out of any of the other body parts like the legs or torso, but the user seems to have the ability to freely control and manipulate it. At first we thought it was some kind of black lightning ability, but it really moves and looks more like a sort of physical energy. It comes out of the user's arm and it can be sent to grab things, but there's also a few different ways it could be used, one of which we'll talk about later in this video. It's a cool quirk, but it's also the kind of quirk that reacted to the user's negative emotions like anger. When the user is angry, we start seeing the energy around the Black Whip and it starts to grow a little bit, showing that anger makes the quirk a little wilder and harder to control. This is important because it isn't clear if this is something that's part of One for All or part of the quirk itself, and this is something that a few people have gone back and forth on in the community for a little while now. You see, some people think that Deku's new abilities will all be triggered by emotions, but it seems more like Black Whip was triggered for another reason. In fact, the whole talk of emotions seems to be more about anger making Black Whip stronger but more dangerous, in the same way that anger does the same thing for Dark Shadow for Tokoyami. I don't think anger is the way to use Black Whip, and I don't think Deku is going to just start discovering quirks based on his mood during fights. Controlling his anger is definitely going to be useful to use his quirk more proficiently. Sure, Deku can use Black Whip normally to some degree. It seems like he can use it for a second but can't really depend on it, but we're not sure what caused it to be so big and powerful when it first came out. Was that because One for All was supercharging the quirk since Deku didn't know what was going on and he was in full cowling, or was it because he was angry? If it's because he was angry, then it would be smart for Deku to learn how to control his anger so he can use the powered up version of the quirk without it going wild on him. To do this, Deku should honestly probably train and meditate with Tokoyami and Shoji, because those two would probably be the most helpful for helping Deku gain optimal control over such a dark-based quirk. It isn't just the quirk that the previous user was talking about though, he was probably also giving Deku advice on being a hero. He tells Deku to control his emotions, but he also says that anger is the original source of power, so it's not like he's telling Deku to never get angry. He's telling him that he needs to get his emotions in line, and doing that might help him think clearly in situations where he might lose his cool, but it'll also allow him to use the appropriate amount of power when he wants it. Either way, it's cool to see that in this short amount of time, Black Whip has gone from being an obstacle to being a tool to being kind of an obstacle again. And while Deku surely isn't going to master it overnight, it's cool to see him just using it, or trying to use it. But how is it summoned and how does it even work? Well, a lot of people online have been raging about Deku even having another quirk to draw from, but honestly, the explanation for it is definitely good enough. Black Quirk was held within a small core that exists within One For All, and that core has been growing and growing as it got passed on between the different users. It kept growing until the point where the energy from within the core is pulsating and spitting out into the flame of One For All, and because of this, the previous powers of the old users are starting to leak out into One For All, giving Deku access to them, but also making them supercharged and way harder to control. As Deku is questioning how he forced the quirk to actually come out of his arm when it did, the One For All user tells him that he must have wanted to capture or grab something really badly, and Deku thinks back and he remembers that he wanted to capture Monoma really badly, and this gives us our activation method and puts the last piece of the puzzle together for what this quirk is, how it's used, and how it can be trained. But there's still the issue of it being hard to control because of it lashing out due to being supercharged. But it seems like Horikoshi showed us why this wouldn't be a problem anymore, and why Deku was ultimately able to use the quirk in the most recent chapter. You see, the One For All user uses Black Whip within Deku's dream world, and to me that basically suggests that Black Whip is actually out of the core that it was being housed in initially, and it's back in control of the vestige that actually held the quirk. The way I look at it is, the vestiges exist within One For All in Deku's dream world, and they're able to control the smoke and the space that they're in, but they don't have control over their quirks, because if they did, they'd just give control of it over to Deku, since the whole goal of the quirk is the users working together and putting their power together so that the next user and the next user after that can be more powerful and capable. Well, with the core within One For All acting out, the essence of Black Whip was released from that core, and I think the vestige getting control over it again was what made it so that Deku could use it, but things weren't settled quite yet, so he couldn't use it properly. When the previous user uses it, he pulls it out and plunges it into Deku's chest. The user's arm starts breaking away, and it sort of looks like he begins to merge into Deku as Deku wakes up. But the most important thing here is that we literally see Black Whip spinning and spiraling into Deku. This scene makes it seem like the Hellboy One For All user is literally giving the ability to Deku, and he wishes him good luck on learning how to master it, but that's pretty cheeky because if my theory is right, this is actually him giving Deku the ability to use it right here. This interaction initially gave me the hope that Deku would end up using Black Whip one more time before this arc was over, and I'll tell you why I thought that was likely, since a lot of people are mad at the fact that it happened at all and acted like they couldn't see it coming. Deku has already used the quirk once before. Even though it was by accident, this still means that he knows what it's like to release the quirk from his body. He was told how to make it come out by the previous user because he pretty much told him that thinking of capturing something or grabbing something is how you make it come out. Deku's already done mental image training of Gran Torino, and he's already really good at picturing something in his head to make progress of his quirk, so it makes sense that Deku was able to grasp the concept of summoning Black Whip, and as he did, it's interesting that it didn't come out exactly like it did for the previous user of the quirk, since it has that smoky aura, but it isn't huge and out of control anymore either, which is pretty great. Now that Deku has some level of control over Black Whip, what are some of the things that I think he'll be able to do with it when he actually does, become sort of proficient with it? Well, what has he done with it already? It was a bunch of tendrils that grew out of Deku's arms, but the energy pretty much gathered around Deku and started moving in weird ways. It moved like it had a mind of its own almost, but we could see it moving towards Deku and Monoma after it initially failed to grab him with its first attack, and then we can see it helping Deku get away from Shinso. I talk about this in my initial videos about it, and you probably shouldn't be watching this video if you've been watching my weekly spoiler, videos or my manga reviews, because I'm pretty much just re-going over a lot of that information that you've been hearing me talk about for the last 2 weeks, but that's definitely stuff that I thought it was good to put all in one video while talking about Black Whip in and of itself, because it seems like that might be going away for a little bit at the moment since we're going to be going to the next arc, and this arc is over. Anyway, I was talking about this in my initial video, but what we're seeing is Black Whip actually responding to Deku's intentions. Sure, it's messy because apparently the quirk is supercharged and Deku is angry at Monoma for what he said about Bakugo and All Might, but the quirk technically is following what Deku wants: capture, escape, and even return. We saw when Deku was trying to force the energy to listen to him that it started sucking itself back into his arm. Assuming things won't be as dramatic as he continues to use the quirk more and more, and assuming that he doesn't have to hide it from everyone besides the class, what specifically could Deku do with Black Whip if he has control over it. Well, Deku could obviously capture or bind his enemies with it in a similar fashion to what Aizawa and Shinso do, and that would be a great new long-range attack for Deku to have. If you remember, he recently started talking to All Might about not having enough long-range tools, and All Might showed him that he can rely on Air Blast now that he's at the right percentage of power. Black Whip gives Deku a long-range quirk that he can use to grab hold of people, but we actually haven't seen it hit somebody yet, and we're not really sure if it leaves some sort of cut or burn on someone when it touches them, but I honestly think that it just works like Venom's tendrils, and that brings me to the title of the video. Horikoshi is a huge fan of Spider-Man, and you definitely can't deny that this whole thing has given Deku a pretty Venom-looking ability, but will Horikoshi go all of the way with this Spider-Man reference here and give us what we all need and deserve? The Thwip. You see, Deku's best use for this quirk actually has nothing to do with its possible offensive capabilities. His best use would actually be to use the quirk for mobility. We see in the previous chapters that it can send him flying large distances, and we've seen how it can stretch and contract. Deku could use this to gain tons of new mobility in battle by using his surroundings, and he can even use it to catapult himself into someone for an even higher speed smash. The coolest way for him to use it though would obviously be some good old-fashioned web swinging. Could you imagine Deku using Black Whip to go from building to building? And how cool that would be when he actually mixes it with his high-speed parkour? This is all I've been able to think about, so I actually got some art for it done, and I've been dying to show it to you guys. This design was done by Mr. Dullpen, who is a great artist and friend in the community, who I will link below. It honestly feels like at some point we're gonna go into some kind of cool black suit Deku type arc, and to pay homage to Horikoshi getting into his Spider-Man bag with Deku here, I wanted to have a sort of black suit Deku art, but also we also had to show him web swinging using Black Whip. Do you like it? Well, you can actually get this on a shirt, as this is my first official shirt. I'm dropping this shirt on Teespring to celebrate 50k subscribers, and that means you can actually rep your pineapple squadness to all of your MHA friends while also showing off Deku in that smooth black suit drip. That's not the only reason you'll be super cool though, because 100% of all the proceeds are going to charity for the first batch of shirts. I've had some experience with family that has had ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, so I thought it'd be nice to have all of the proceeds of the first batch of shirts go directly to the ALS Association of New York City. You can view more details about that on Teespring, and you can also verify that for anyone that would obviously be skeptical. This first wave of shirts is going to feature an olive green cityscape behind Deku as he swings around, but after this batch I'll be adding more colors and changing a few minor things, but the olive green variant is never going to come back, so make sure that you grab that one if that's the one you'd like, and of course if you don't mind supporting a good cause, you can do that as well. Now that you've seen what it would look like, how down are you to see Deku hopefully using Black Whip for mobility if that's how he plans on using it? And do you think that Horikoshi would use the thwip sound effect? I don't think that Sony technically owns the little thwip sound effect, and it would be a cool Easter egg to an already dope homage to the Spider-Man universe. Hopefully you get to try it out soon, but if not, it'll be interesting to see what other ways Deku plans on using his new quirk and what All Might and the other students are going to say about this. Even Vlad saw what was happening here, so what's the explanation gonna be when they've got to talk about how Deku just used another quirk? By this point, I should already have a video talking about that out, so make sure you go and check that out. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please leave me a like since it really helps out the channel, of course, and please subscribe. My YouTube stats say there are roughly 500,000 unique viewers who watch my videos a month, and if all of you subscribe, the channel would be huge, so I'll make sure to remind you guys to subscribe so we can continue to grow and do even more cool stuff. For now, this is all I've got for you guys. Thank you for the 50k, enjoy the 50k shirt if you do get it, and I'll see you later. This is Pineapple. Peace.